Hello again, my lovelies, and welcome back to my channel. I will not hold you up any longer, so go ahead and grab yourself something to drink, a snack, sit back and relax as we continue on with Avatar: The Legend of Percy, Trial by Fire, written by WardofWinters. Chapter 23, I Become a Known Fugitive. I opened my eyes to water. It was clean, strikingly so. My awareness slowly spread and I realized I was in a bubble of clean. The water around it was filthy, filled with trash and pollution. I blinked slowly, where a figure moved in front of me. They looked like Tethys, but their tail was different, darker, and they felt more soothing. They smiled and pulled away, a medicine pouch in hand. My body still burned, but it was fading, the pain aching and throbbing, but not something that made me feel shattered. The figure vanished. I stared around in confusion, slowly sitting up. Where? My hand hit something in the mud beside me, and I turned to find my knife in the mud beside me. It must have fallen from my hand when I fell. I scooped it up and slipped it back into its sheath. The knife hadn't been any help. Those enemies were too large, too deadly. The Chimera was far more dangerous than the Minotaur, which was saying something cause the Minotaur was hugely dangerous. Echidna was even worse. The only way she'd been killed was in her sleep. I didn't stand a chance. My leg was still throbbing, drawing my attention. I looked down, afraid of what I might see. There was a treated seaweed wrap around my leg. I could just see the edges of an ointment spread above where the seaweed went. My leg was throbbing, but it wasn't as bad as before. I relaxed. It seemed like the figure from before was here to heal me. Did Tethys send them? I shifted and winced as my leg flashed with pain. I should probably stay in the water until it felt better. A lot better. They must have been sent by Tethys. It would explain why my bubble of purity felt like her, curling currents and cleanliness. She heard me. She saved me. Or well, she sent someone to save me. She made the bubble of purity and sent a healer, and she listened to me. Hafu, I whispered to the water. Hafua. There was no answer, but I knew she must have heard. She heard my prayer, after all. I stared out at the water, and my gaze was drawn to the curled vine peeking through the mud. I bent and gently tugged out the curl of vine, a single trumpet flower still on it. I must have pulled it down with me when I fell. I smiled. This little vine probably saved my life. I slipped it into my pocket. I carefully moved my leg again. The pain was fading. The burning was still there, faint but present, but it was fading. I waited. The river around me was still filthy, but any trash that drifted into my bubble of purity was cleansed. Thump, 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 thump. A riverboat's paddle wheel churned above me, swirling the silt around. I straightened as through the swirling silt I noticed another presence. A new sensation brushed over me, too faint to identify. Stand tall, Percy Aya. Ravrik Otomai. Your Metua believes in you. I looked out. The drifting figure was almost invisible in the silt and seemed to be constantly shifting. The words seemed to come from everywhere, rippling through the water like a dolphin sonar. Where are you? I called. I felt her presence strengthen before I saw her clearly. a ghostly woman in the filthy water, away from my bubble of purity. She had long, billowing hair, and her eyes, barely visible, were a striking sea green, the only thing visible in the color. I swallowed. Her face, her hair, it all resembled my mom. It was also like she was my mom's clone, except the eyes. They didn't change like my mom's. Hello, child. I am Dinamene, Nereid of the sea's power. I bear a message from your father. What is this message, Dinamene Paru? Why did he have a message for me? He'd never spoken to me before. Go to the beach in Santa Monica. It is your father's will. Before you descend into the underworld, you must go to Santa Monica. Please, Perseia. I cannot stay long. The river here is too foul for my presence. I swallowed. Why did my dad want me there? Tahuk, Sataerd Papyra, I said, thanking her for passing along the message. My fingers automatically twisted into a motion of thanks. She reached out, and despite the distance, I felt a current brushing my cheek as her presence started to fade. You go, Santa Monica and Percy. Not trust, gifts. I frowned. Gifts? But she faded, her presence gone. What gifts? I muttered. She brought the message all the way from my Metua. This was the first time he'd acknowledged me other than the claiming. I wasn't sure how I felt about it. I moved my leg again, finding the pain only a faint twinge. The burning faded from my senses entirely. My leg would probably not be fully recovered for a while still, but I should be good enough to function. It's time for me to go ashore. I came ashore near a set of steps that led out of the water. I saw the chaos above, only a few steps out of the water. Everything was drenched. There were puddles all over. All the buildings were dripping water, and there were emergency vehicles all over. There was mud, trash, and all kinds of things that were normally in rivers. Not that it should be, mind you. All over, and some fish. The fact that the river was still filthy with so much dumped on the shore was rather concerning. I looked around, taking in the scene. There were quite a few people getting wrapped in shock blankets and more getting bandaged up. Firefighters were parked all around the base of the Ark, and there were news helicopters above. Reporters were swarming the ground. What happened? I remember falling. I shouldn't have ended up in the river with that fall. The Ark was too far from the river, yet somehow I did? I tried to remember what happened, but it all was black. Did I do that? Did Tethys run? The remains of destruction reminded me of what I'd seen in Avatar when Korra rode a wave across the crystal caverns. Was this like that? Did I cause a wave? Did someone else? I couldn't remember anything other than pain. I had no idea how I reached the water, but it was a good thing I did. I slipped up the rest of the stairs and snuck around the people. I realized belatedly that my Grover's hat fell off at some point and made sure to keep my head down. As I slipped behind a cameraman, I heard the news lady talking. It's been noted that it's probably not a terrorist attack, but it's still very early in the investigation. As you can see, the damage is very serious. There's a strange growth of some kind of flowering vine all over the Ark, and it's still growing. Oops, on top of that, there was a freak tsunami from the river. There's also been some reports of someone falling from the Ark, but they were lost in the chaos of the wave arriving. So that was what happened. I slipped back into the crowd and tried to focus on the faint taste of berries that signals Grover's presence. Where was it? An adolescent boy, a different reporter was saying as I snuck by. Channel 5 has learned that surveillance cameras show an adolescent boy against what appears to be a rabid moose. She faltered. There was also an old lady wielding a flamethrower. We're still not certain how all of that got to the observation deck, but combined, they somehow set off a freak explosion. The rabbit moose and old lady went missing during the tsunami, so please keep an eye out, citizens. We aren't sure where the water on the deck came from, but some are theorizing it's from the tsunami. The veins are currently being considered a wild gardening accident. A wild gardening accident? Land dwellers were strange, but at least the chimera looked like a rabbit moose, so I didn't look completely nuts up there. The moose should not have been on the arch, declared another news reporter. We're well past that, dismissed his partner. I ducked my head and went back to searching for Grover. There was a faint taste of berries and then, Percy! Grover bleated, tackling me. I breathed in the scent of freshly cut grass and relaxed. They were safe. I was safe. We were all alive. We also needed to leave. I thought you'd gone to Hades the hard way. Wouldn't it technically be the easy way? Annabeth huffed, standing behind Grover and trying to hide her relief. We can't leave you alone for 5 minutes. What happened? What's on your leg? I shook my head. Not here. I'll tell you on the train. We need to get out of here. Gangway! A cop shouted, parting the crowd. A couple of paramedics hustled out, rolling a woman on a stretcher, the mom of the little boy from the observation deck. She was babbling. And then the chihuahua, because it was a chihuahua. It wasn't anymore, and then it turned into a fire-breathing moose, and it set everything on fire, and then... Okay, ma'am, the paramedic soothed. Just calm down. Your family is fine. The medication is starting to kick in. I'm not crazy. The boy got kicked out the hole by the moose, and all the vines. The crazy lady was laughing, and she saw me. There's the boy! I yanked Annabeth and Grover away, ducking my head again. I never had a problem with my blue hair before, but I was beginning to think it made me too recognizable. Just a little, mind you. What's going on? Annabeth hissed. Was she talking about the chihuahua on the elevator? I shook my head. To the train first. I'll tell you everything once we get away. They both reluctantly nodded as we passed another reporter. Perseus Jackson, that's right, Dan. Channel 12 has learned that the boy who was fighting the rabbit moose and may have had a hand in the explosion and freak gardening incident fits the description of a missing person who is wanted for questioning both for his and his mother's disappearances, and for a serious incident in New Jersey with a bus 3 days ago. And the boy is believed to be traveling west. For our viewers at home, there is a photo of Perseus Jackson. We ducked around the news van and slipped into an alley. First things first, I said. We've got to get out of town. We made it back to the Amtrak with a bag of monster donuts from a store near the station, and the place smelled acidic. But the others didn't notice, and since nothing bad happened and the donuts didn't have any sensations, I ignored it. Annabeth also stopped in a store on the way and bought a silk scarf. It was a plain black with constellation pattern on it. We settled into our seats and Annabeth turned to me. We need to hide your hair. I nodded. It was too obvious. I loved it, but I also couldn't risk people recognizing me, as it was a miracle no one had yet. Annabeth leaned over to cover my hair with the scarf. I'm gonna do this like I do my basic veils, she said. She laid it on top of my head, then crossed the ends at the base of my scalp. Then she tied it and twisted it. "You'll have to do this yourself sometime, so pay attention," she added. She pinned it as a bun at the base of my scalp, using my apparently magic coral hairpin from Triton. She nodded. "It covers your hair just fine, just don't let it slip. People will be looking for your hair. There's also another style you can do with just one pin, and there's way more for 2 or more pins." Thanks. "So, are you going to tell us what happened now?" I took a deep breath, then started talking. I told them about how the Chihuahua turned into a chimera, then how Echidna revealed her identity and told me she was sent by Zeus to kill me. I explained how I got bit when I was trying to fight both of them, and then how I used the seed gift from the Demeter cabin. I then had to explain what the gift was and why I got it and how it worked, since I forgot to tell them about the gifts. It was a good thing I'd grabbed those seeds. They were the least dangerous of the 3. I told them how I fell and must have called water to catch me, or it was Tethys, but I didn't say that, or how she sent someone to heal me. I finished by telling them about the Nereid that appeared, sending me to Santa Monica as my Metuano command. "How are we gonna get to Santa Monica?" Grover said. "We can't ignore a summons from your dad." I nodded reluctantly. I didn't know if I wanted to do as my Metua said, but it could be important. Plus Triton would want me to. We nibbled on the donuts and settled down to wait for our final stop. It was probably a good thing that we didn't get tickets for the whole route. At this rate, that would end in us getting found. I looked out the window as the train started moving and watched the St. Louis skyline that glittered with emergency light faded behind us. Triton's point of view. I hadn't been this angry since Pallas. Pallas died. Mevu stopped me from going to Percy, from healing him. She banned me from leaving the palace even. I'd been lectured for letting my loyalty get the best of me and reminded of my duty to my subjects. Going to Percy now would incite war. Metu wasn't happy with the situation either. Not once he realized that Percy was dying, which he'd noticed a few minutes after me. Percy was dying and I was kept away from him. I didn't know how he recovered, but I was relieved. I'd need to update the pin and his matching charm to give me more detailed information on his health. I'd need to get him something to counter venom as well. Mevu forced me to sit, though, reminding me of the war and assuring me that he was healing already. I knew that he was healing, but I didn't know how. Mevu said she didn't send anyone, and yet he almost died, and I was here. I was here, and he could have died. I could have lost him. I could lose my brother. He was so young, so small. I had so much left to teach him and so much to do. Mebu stopped me from reaching him, from ensuring his safety. She stopped me from making sure he knew I was there for him. He was alone and dying, and she stopped me from going to him. I was furious. I was afraid for him. Wasn't the whole point to prove to the sea that he was an Ipri of Atlantis? And yet she stopped me? I was swimming in circles. My brother was clearly in danger more than I'd dared to imagine. I couldn't let this continue on, except Mevu wouldn't let me leave. I scowled. There were paths out, but my disappearances would be noted. Even only sending a piece of myself to Percy would catch their attention. I didn't have time for this. I needed some way to keep him safe from afar, even with others stopping me from helping him. He was a child, skilled but young. Children weren't supposed to be doing these quests. Why would the land send him off like this? Camp Tetomoa of Atlantis, Camp Poihonu of Okeanos Trench, even Camp Papuore of Duberticus Kingdom wouldn't let anyone take quests until at least 16. Camp Poihonu didn't allow it until 17. Why did the Camp Half-Blood let a 12-year-old do it? I paused. The sea camps? Maybe. Maybe I could assign a quest. That was an idea. Tethys point of view. Tatal omasar mevani. I flicked around, smiling at my motuvo galene. How is he? She smiled and settled in one of the tepatehe. I reached him in time. But it was very close. The purity you put around him gave him the time I needed to reach him and allowed me to stay in the water without too much trouble. It was so gross. Good. Will he heal fully? That was my greatest worry. The Gagmure Ofi was long extinct, except in the Chimera's tail. Galene was one of the few that still knew how to treat it. But it wasn't uncommon to have to amputate the limb bitten. He should. He is a strong child, and his own healing skills, at least in regards to self-healing, are rather strong. He might want to consider healing lessons at some point, though he seems inclined towards purifying magic from what I could sense. I nodded. Okeanos did tell me that he's already able to feel the presence of power and magic around him. She blinked. Strange. He's young for that. I hummed. So he will be okay? Not to worry, Mevani. She pulled up and flicked to my side, kissing my cheek. My future Tonton is just fine. I smiled. Please, he'd prayed, calling for me. Good. Aww. I do love Tethys in this fanfiction. She's so soft, also so powerful, just a queen in all the ways. But I'm getting carried away. Why don't we go to the Halmaheran and terminology translations? First of all, we have Percy with just the Halmaheran spelling of Percy. We have Hafu and Havua for thank you and thank you a lot. Rav Rik Otomai is do not despair. Metua for father as always. Havu Rao Tahok Sata Erd Papyra, thank you for giving me the message. We have Metuano, who's fathers. Metu for dad. The counterpart being Mevu for mom. Aipri for prince. Mevani is grandmother. And Tonton is uncle. Isn't that adorable? For the suffixes, we have Ran, meaning old queen. Aya for prince and Paru for messenger. For the terminology-wise, we have Chimera, which is the phonetic spelling of chimera. Echidna, which is just with a K instead of a C. For Echidna, we have Camp Tetomoa, which is an undersea camp in Atlantis for training. We have Camp Poihonu, the undersea camp of Okeanos territory for training. Camp Papuore, the undersea camp of Duberticus, kingdom of training. Duperticus is the god of fountains, lakes, and oceans in Lusitanian mythology, which apparently has very little information, unfortunately. The Gagmure Ofi is the snake that WardofWinters made up after many hours of research. And of course, again, we have the veiling tradition from ancient Greek that magic users, women, and mainly healers used. And we also have nothing else. Also, why don't you go down into the link in the description to either go to WardofWinters' original fanfiction, to their Tumblr, or their Discord. They always welcome new people. And with that, if you liked it, why don't you consider liking and subscribing? It will help the channel greatly. And without further ado, grab yourself another drink, and I'll see you next time. Goodbye, my lovelies.